I never thought I'd be the kind of person people whispered about in break rooms. But there I was at 28, becoming exactly that. The guy who ate lunch alone. The one who never had weekend plans. The perpetual third wheel who stopped getting invited because everyone felt too sorry for me to actually want me there. My co-worker, Melissa, once told me, years later, that the office had an unspoken rule about not asking about my personal life because it was just too depressing. That's what I'd become. The man everyone pitied. It wasn't always like this. I had friends in college, went to parties, lived what I thought was a normal life. But somewhere in my mid-20s, I just sort of faded into the background of my own existence. I worked as a data analyst for a mid-sized marketing firm in Seattle, spent my evenings watching Netflix in my studio apartment, and convinced myself that this quiet, safe life was enough. I told myself I was content. I told myself I didn't need what other people needed. I told myself a lot of lies back then. The truth I wasn't ready to face was simpler and more terrifying. I was lonely. Not just alone, but achingly, desperately lonely, in a way that had nothing to do with the number of people around me. I was lonely because I was hiding. And hiding is the loneliest thing you can do. My awakening, if you want to call it that, started on a completely unremarkable Tuesday in March. The Seattle rain was doing its thing, that persistent drizzle that's more mist than actual rain, and I was grabbing my usual coffee from the shop 2 blocks from my apartment. I'd been going to Remedy Coffee for 3 years, always ordered the same thing, always exchanged the same pleasantries with whoever was behind the counter, and always left without making any real connection. But that Tuesday, there was someone new working the espresso machine. I noticed him immediately, which itself was unusual for me. I'd trained myself not to notice, not to look too long, not to let my eyes linger on things that might reveal the parts of myself I kept locked away. But this guy made not noticing impossible. He had dark hair that fell just slightly too long over his forehead, the kind of carefully careless style that probably took no effort for him but would have taken me an hour. His name tag said, Luca. He was laughing at something the other barista said, and his whole face transformed when he smiled, like someone had turned on a light inside him. I felt something shift in my chest, a small earthquake I tried to ignore. When it was my turn to order, he looked up at me with these warm brown eyes and said, "Hey, what can I get started for you?" His voice had this easy, genuine quality that made me feel like he actually cared about the answer, even though I knew it was just good customer service. I ordered my usual, medium Americano, room for cream. I'd said those exact words probably 1,000 times, but somehow, with him looking at me, they felt clumsy in my mouth. "You got it," he said, and then he did something unexpected. He actually looked at me, not through me the way people usually did. "I haven't seen you here before." "Well, I'm new, so I haven't seen anyone here before, but you seem like a regular." "Yeah," I managed. 3 years. 3 years of Americanos with room for cream. Creature of habit, I guess." He grinned and I felt that shift in my chest again, stronger this time. "Nothing wrong with knowing what you like. I'm Luca, by the way. Just started yesterday." "Dylan," I said, and the fact that I offered my name without being asked felt significant, like I'd just done something brave. I should have left it there. Taken my coffee, gone to work, forgotten about the new barista with the easy smile. But I didn't forget. I thought about him during my morning meeting. I thought about him while analyzing click-through rates for a client's email campaign. I thought about him on my lunch break and during my commute home, and while I was heating up frozen pad thai for dinner. I thought about him in a way I'd trained myself not to think about anyone. The next morning I went back to Remedy, and the morning after that, and the one after that. I told myself it was just my routine, that I'd been going there for years anyway. But I started timing my visits for when I thought he might be working. I learned his schedule without meaning to. Tuesdays through Saturdays, opening shift. Luca remembered my order after the second day. By the end of the first week, he'd started making it as soon as he saw me walk in. Medium Americano with room for cream for my most consistent customer, he'd say, and I'd feel ridiculously pleased that he'd remembered, that I'd registered in his mind as anything at all. We started talking. Nothing deep at first, just the kind of small talk that happens in coffee shops. He told me he'd moved to Seattle from Portland 3 months ago, that he was trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life, that he played guitar in a band that practiced in his friend's garage. I told him about my job in the vaguest possible terms, mentioned that I'd lived in Seattle my whole life, that I liked the rain, even though everyone thought that was weird. "It's not weird," he said one morning, leaning against the counter during a rare quiet moment. "The rain is honest, you know? It doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. I respect that." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. But something about the way he said it made me think he understood things other people didn't. 6 weeks after I first saw him, Luca invited me to hear his band play. It was a Thursday evening, and the coffee shop was nearly empty. He was wiping down the espresso machine when he said, almost casually, "Hey, we're playing at the Sunset Tavern tomorrow night. You should come if you're free. I mean, we're not great or anything, but we're enthusiastic." My immediate instinct was to make an excuse. I didn't go to bars. I didn't put myself in social situations where I'd have to explain who I was or wasn't with, where people might ask questions I didn't want to answer. But when I looked at Luca, at the hopeful expression on his face, I heard myself say, "Yeah, okay. What time?" The surprise and pleasure in his smile made my stomach flip. "Really? That's awesome. We go on around 9. I'll put you on the list. Dylan, right? I won't forget." I spent the next 24 hours trying to talk myself out of going. I picked out and discarded 7 different outfits. I almost cancelled 3 times. But at 8:30 on Friday night, I found myself walking into the Sunset Tavern, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The place was more crowded than I expected, full of people who seemed comfortable in their own skin, in a way I'd never managed. I ordered a beer I didn't really want, and found a spot near the back where I could watch without being too visible. When Luca's band took the stage, I saw him scan the crowd. His eyes found mine, and his face lit up. He pointed at me and mouthed, "You came," and I nodded, feeling simultaneously exposed and seen in a way that was terrifying and exhilarating. They were actually good. Luca played rhythm guitar and sang backup vocals, and there was something magnetic about watching him perform. He was completely unself-conscious, lost in the music, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. I felt something opening up inside me, some door I'd kept locked for so long I'd almost forgotten it was there. After their set, Luca made his way through the crowd to where I was standing. He was slightly sweaty, his hair disheveled, his eyes bright with adrenaline. "You stayed," he said, slightly breathless. "You were really good," I told him, and meant it. "Yeah?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely pleased. "Thanks for coming, seriously. It means a lot that you're here." He paused, then asked, "Do you want to get out of here? There's a diner around the corner that makes these incredible late-night pancakes." We ended up at a vinyl booth diner that smelled like coffee and maple syrup, sitting across from each other while Luca demolished a stack of blueberry pancakes, and I picked at French fries I wasn't hungry for. We talked for 3 hours. Really talked. In a way I hadn't talked to anyone in years. He told me about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about coming out to his parents when he was 17, about the relief and terror of being honest about who he was. He talked about his ex-boyfriend, about heartbreak and recovery, about learning to trust people again. He was so open, so unguarded, and I sat there marveling at his courage while simultaneously panicking about my own lack of it. "What about you?" he asked eventually, his eyes curious and kind. "Anyone special in your life?" The question I'd been dreading. The question I'd spent years deflecting and avoiding. I could have lied, could have given him some vague answer that revealed nothing. But sitting there with him, in that moment, the truth felt closer to the surface than it had ever been. "No," I said quietly. "There's never really been anyone." "By choice?" he asked gently, and the way he asked it made me think he already knew the answer. I looked down at my plate, at the cold French fries I'd been rearranging for the past 10 minutes. Not exactly. More like by fear, I guess. The silence that followed should have been awkward, but it wasn't. When I finally looked up, Luca was watching me with an expression of such understanding that I felt something crack inside me. "Fear is honest too," he said softly. "Maybe not as respectable as rain, but just as real." I laughed, surprised by the sound of it. "Is that your philosophy on everything? Finding the honesty in feelings?" "Pretty much. Life's too short to pretend you're feeling something you're not. Or not feeling something you are." He held my gaze when he said it, and I wondered if he could see right through me. If he knew about the feelings I was desperately trying not to name. After that night, something shifted between us. Our morning coffee exchanges became longer, more personal. He started texting me throughout the day, random thoughts and funny observations and pictures of things he thought I'd like. I found myself checking my phone constantly, smiling at messages from someone who seemed genuinely interested in talking to me. My co-worker, Melissa, noticed. "You seem different lately," she said one afternoon, cornering me by the printer. "Happier. Did something happen?" "I made a friend," I said, and even though it was the truth, it felt like a lie because friend didn't begin to cover what Luca was becoming to me. "A friend," she repeated, smiling knowingly. "Well, this friend is good for you. You should keep them around." 2 months after that first show, Luca invited me to a party his roommate was throwing. I almost said no, falling back into old patterns. But he looked at me with those warm eyes and said, "Come on, Dylan. I want you there. Plus, I'll need at least one person I actually like to talk to." The party was everything I usually avoided. Too many people, too much noise, too many opportunities to feel out of place. But Luca stayed by my side most of the night, including me in conversations, making sure I was okay. At one point, someone assumed we were together, and instead of correcting them, Luca just smiled and changed the subject. Later, we ended up on the apartment's small balcony, escaping the noise inside. The Seattle night was clear for once, stars actually visible above the city lights. We stood there in comfortable silence, and I was acutely aware of how close he was standing. How if I moved my hand just slightly, it would touch his. "Can I tell you something?" Luca said, his voice quiet. "Yeah. I'm really glad you walked into that coffee shop. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. You've become kind of important to me." My heart was racing. "You've become important to me too." He turned to look at me, and there was something in his expression that made it hard to breathe. "Dylan, I need to ask you something, and you can tell me if I'm completely wrong. But I have to know." "Okay," I whispered. "Are you gay?" The question hung between us, simple and terrifying and inevitable. I'd never said it out loud, never admitted it to anyone, barely admitted it to myself. But standing there with Luca, under the stars, I felt that locked door inside me finally swing open. "Yes," I said. and the word felt like jumping off a cliff and learning to fly at the same time. "Okay," he said softly. Then, "Is this the first time you've said that out loud?" "Yeah." He reached over and took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. The simple contact sent electricity through my entire body. "Thank you for trusting me with that." We stood there holding hands, and I felt tears prickling at my eyes because I'd spent so many years being the man everyone pitied, the one who was always alone. And now here was someone who saw me, really saw me, and didn't look away. "I like you," Lucas said. "Like really like you. I have for a while now, but I didn't want to push you or make you uncomfortable. I was trying to wait until you were ready. I like you too," I admitted, my voice shaking. "I've been terrified of how much I like you. You don't have to be terrified anymore." He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. When his lips touched mine, gentle and questioning, I felt something fundamental shift in my understanding of myself. This was what I'd been running from, what I'd been denying, what I'd been too afraid to reach for. And it was perfect. The kiss was soft and brief, but when we pulled apart, the world felt different. I felt different. Like I'd been living in black and white, and someone had just turned on the color. "Is this okay?" he asked, still holding my hand. "This is more than okay," I said. And then I kissed him again, less tentatively this time. We left the party shortly after that and walked through Seattle's quiet streets, holding hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. Luca walked me to my apartment, and we stood outside my building, neither of us wanting the night to end. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now we see where this goes. No pressure, no expectations. Just you and me, figuring it out together." "I'm going to be bad at this," I warned him. "I don't know how to do any of this." "Good thing I'm patient," he said, smiling. "Besides, you're already better at this than you think. You're here, aren't you? You're being honest. That's the hardest part." Over the following weeks, Luca helped me navigate this new version of myself with a patience and understanding that still amazes me. He never pushed me to come out to anyone before I was ready, never made me feel guilty for the years I'd spent hiding. He just showed up, consistently and genuinely, proving through his presence that I was worth showing up for. I started coming out to people slowly. First to Melissa, who hugged me and said she'd known for years. Then to a few other co-workers. Then, in a terrifying phone call, to my parents. My mum cried, but not for the reasons I'd feared. "I just want you to be happy," she said. "I've watched you be so lonely for so long. If this Luca makes you happy, then I'm happy." The man everyone had pitied was learning to stop pitying himself. I was learning that being seen, really seen, wasn't something to fear. That love wasn't something that happened to other people. That I deserved the same joy and connection I'd watched everyone else experience. 6 months after that first kiss on the balcony, Luca and I moved in together. My studio apartment gave way to a one-bedroom we could barely afford, but loved anyway. We made coffee together in the mornings, fought over whose turn it was to do dishes, fell asleep tangled together on our second-hand couch. It was ordinary and extraordinary all at once. The office stopped pitying me because there was nothing to pity anymore. I brought Luca to the company holiday party, introduced him as my boyfriend with a pride that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. People told me I seemed different, happier, more present. They were right. But the biggest change wasn't visible to anyone else. It was internal. It was the way I'd stopped apologizing for taking up space in the world. The way I'd learned to accept love instead of deflecting it. The way I'd discovered that the person I'd been hiding wasn't shameful or wrong, just scared. Luca taught me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing you can do. That letting someone see all of you, the messy and uncertain and still figuring it out parts, is how real connection happens. That love isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest. We've been together for 2 years now. We still go to Remedy Coffee sometimes, though Luca doesn't work there anymore. He's in school now, studying music therapy, following a dream he'd been too afraid to chase before. I've learned to play guitar badly, and sometimes we play together in our living room, him patient with my clumsy chord changes, me marveling that this is my life now. I'm not the man everyone pities anymore. I'm the man someone cherishes. But more importantly, I'm the man who learned to cherish himself. Luca didn't save me. He just held up a mirror and helped me see that I was worth saving. He showed me that hiding might feel safe. But living is better. Sometimes I think about that version of myself who walked into the coffee shop that rainy Tuesday morning, so locked down and lonely, and convinced that this half-life was all I deserved. I wish I could tell him that everything he's afraid of wanting is waiting for him just on the other side of his fear, that the risk of being seen is worth it, that love, real love, doesn't require you to be anyone other than who you are. I found that love in a coffee shop, in warm brown eyes and an easy smile, in someone who saw through my walls and waited patiently for me to take them down myself. I found it in late-night diners and balcony conversations and the courage to say yes out loud. I found it in learning to be honest about who I am and who I love. The man everyone pitied became the man someone cherished, and in being cherished, learned to cherish himself. That's the real love story. Not just finding someone who loves you, but learning to believe you deserve to be loved. Learning to step out of the shadows and into the light, even when it's terrifying. Learning that you're worth the risk. If you're reading this and you're where I was, hiding and afraid and convinced you're better off alone, I want you to know something. You're not. The life you're afraid to reach for is possible. The love you think isn't meant for you exists. The version of yourself you're keeping locked away deserves to breathe. It starts with small acts of courage. Ordering coffee, showing up to a concert, holding someone's hand, saying yes when every instinct tells you to say no. It starts with trusting that being seen is worth the vulnerability, that connection is worth the risk, that you are worth fighting for. I'm not special. I'm just someone who got tired of being lonely and found the courage to do something about it. Someone who met the right person at the right time and decided to take the leap. Someone who learned that the other side of fear is freedom. So this is my story. The story of how the man everyone pitied became the man someone cherished. But really, it's the story of how I learned to cherish myself. How I learned that love starts with honesty, with yourself and with others. How I learned that the life I wanted was possible if I was brave enough to reach for it. And I did reach for it. I'm still reaching for it every day, with Luca beside me, both of us figuring it out as we go. It's not perfect. Some days are hard, but it's real, and it's mine, and it's everything I was too afraid to want. That's what love is, I think. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to be brave anyway. The choice to show up as yourself and trust that you're enough. The faith that somewhere out there is someone who will see you, all of you, and choose to stay. I found that someone, and in finding him, I found myself.